My husband called me fat and dumped me in the trash. Then I made him beg to come back. Emily Wilson never imagined that 15 years of marriage would end with her sitting inside a dumpster, crying while clutching the wedding ring her husband had thrown in her face. The public humiliation in the condo courtyard still echoed in her ears, along with Richard's cruel words. It all started during an argument about household bills. Richard came home angry, complaining about the lunch she had prepared. When Emily tried to explain that she had saved money by buying cheaper ingredients, he exploded in a way she had never seen before. 15 years putting up with you getting fatter and fatter, Richard shouted, slamming his plate on the floor. You've turned into a lazy woman who only knows how to eat. Richard, please, the neighbors will hear. Emily tried to calm him, but her words only made things worse. Let them hear. I want everyone to know what kind of woman I have at home. Richard deliberately opened the windows. A useless fat woman who can't even cook right. Tears streamed down Emily's face. In 15 years, Richard had never spoken to her like this. Yes, she had gained weight after marriage, especially after losing the baby they had tried for years to have, but he had always said he loved her just the way she was. Richard, what's happening to you? We can talk. Talk? He laughed scornfully. I'm done talking. I'm done pretending I can stand sharing a bed with you. Richard started grabbing Emily's clothes from the closet and throwing them on the floor. She tried to stop him, but he shoved her hard. Richard, you hurt me. Stop this. You want to know where you belong? He kept grabbing her things. I'll show you exactly where you belong. Emily followed him to the elevator, begging him to stop. Some neighbors were already peeking out of their apartments, watching the commotion. Richard dragged a bag of her clothes to the condo's inner courtyard, where the dumpsters were. Your place is here. He lifted the dumpster lid and threw her clothes inside. In the trash, along with all the junk you eat. Richard, don't do this. Emily tried to grab her clothes, but he held her arm. Want your clothes? Then go get them. He practically pushed her into the dumpster. Emily fell among the trash bags, hurting her knee. The strong smell and the humiliation made her nauseous. Richard pulled off his wedding ring and threw it at her. It's over, Emily. I can't take it anymore. You disgust me. He stormed off, leaving her there. Emily tried to climb out of the dumpster, but was hurt and shaking. Neighbors watched from their windows, some even filming with their phones. The humiliation was complete. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now continuing, that's when Emily felt a gentle hand on her arm. It was Mr. Walter, the building's caretaker, a man in his 60s who had always been kind to her. Mrs. Wilson, let me help you out of there, he said softly, offering her support to stand. Thank you, Mr. Walter, she managed to murmur through tears. Come here, sit on this bench. He led her to a bench in the condo garden. I'll get you some water. While Mr. Walter went to fetch water, Emily tried to process what had just happened. 15 years of marriage, 15 years of taking care of the house, cooking, cleaning, ironing. And it all ended like this? She looked at her clothes scattered in the trash and burst into even heavier sobs. Here, Mrs. Wilson, Mr. Walter returned with a glass of water and some tissues. Do you want me to call someone? I don't know. I think I'll call my mum, she said, picking up her phone with trembling hands. But when she tried to use the joint card to get a taxi, she discovered it was blocked. Richard had cancelled everything. Her mother wasn't answering the phone, and she had no money in her pocket. Mr. Walter, could you lend me money for the bus? I promise I'll pay you back tomorrow. Of course, Mrs. Emily, but are you sure you're in any condition to travel like this? Before she could answer, laughter echoed from the building. It was Karen, Emily's sister-in-law and Richard's sister, coming down the stairs with a smug look on her face. Oh, what a pathetic scene, Karen said, walking closer. Finally, my brother woke up. Karen, please, not now. Emily tried to stand, but was still shaken. Oh, now's the perfect time. Did you really think I didn't know this would happen? Karen crossed her arms. I've been telling Richard for years that you're nothing but a burden. Mr. Walter stepped forward, clearly uncomfortable. Mrs. Karen, don't you think this is humiliation enough? Humiliation is what she put my brother through all these years. Karen ignored the caretaker. You know, Emily, I should thank you. For months, I've been convincing Richard to leave you. What do you mean? Emily felt her stomach twist. You really think it was a coincidence he blew up out of nowhere? Karen smirked. I showed Richard some pictures of you. Pictures of you all dressed up, leaving the house when he wasn't around. What pictures? Pictures of you talking to that baker on the corner. You think I'm stupid? I know you're having an affair with him. Emily was stunned. The baker on the corner was Mr. Anthony, a 70-year-old man she'd known for decades. Sometimes they chatted about recipes when she bought bread. Karen, you're insane. Mr. Anthony is an elderly man who... Don't give me that. Karen cut her off. I already told your mother everything too. She was so disappointed she said she doesn't even want to see you anymore. Emily's world collapsed. Karen had manipulated everything, spread lies, destroyed her relationships, and worst of all, she'd even convinced her own mother. Why are you doing this to me? Emily managed to ask, still in disbelief. Because I love my brother, Karen said coldly, and because our family business will do much better without you draining his money. Emily had never fully understood the logistics of the transport company Richard ran with his siblings, but she knew it was profitable. Now she understood. Karen wanted Richard's share for herself. Now get out of our lives. Karen started to walk away. Richard already changed the locks. Your things are in the trash where you belong. Mr. Walter helped Emily retrieve her clothes from the dumpster. Many were dirty and torn, but they were all she had left. The weight of reality crashed over her like an avalanche. She was homeless, broke, familyless, with nothing. Mrs. Emily, if you'd like, you can stay in the storage room tonight, Mr. Walter offered. Tomorrow, we'll figure something out. Thank you, Mr. Walter, but I can't accept. You might get in trouble with the building manager. Then let me call my wife. She can prepare a place for you at our house. I don't want to bother anyone else. Emily was too exhausted to think straight. I'll just stay here in the lobby just for tonight. Mr. Walter didn't like the idea but respected her decision. He brought her a blanket and a small pillow, and Emily spent the longest night of her life sitting in a lobby armchair. In the early hours, she tried to process everything. How had it come to this? She'd always been a devoted wife, took care of the house, worked when needed, tried to have children. Where had she gone wrong? But the more she thought about it, the more she realized it wasn't her fault. Richard had changed over the years. He'd become more ambitious, more materialistic, more influenced by his brothers. And Karen had always treated her poorly, always made cruel comments about her weight, her clothes, her cooking. When the sun rose, Emily felt a glimmer of hope. At least she had survived the first night. But when she went to the hallway bathroom to freshen up, she found an envelope someone had slipped under the door. Inside were photos. Photos of her talking to Mr. Anthony, photos of her helping Mrs. Gloria, an elderly woman from the neighborhood, carry groceries, photos of her visiting Mrs. Teresa, who was recovering from surgery. There were at least 20 photos, all taken secretly over months. On the back of one photo, it read, "Now everyone knows what kind of woman you are." Emily was confused. The photos showed her helping people, being kind, caring for others. How could this be used against her? Then she understood. Karen had shown only some of these photos to Richard and his mother, making up stories about each one. That's when she heard a familiar voice. "Emily? Sweetheart, are you okay?" It was Mrs. Gloria, the 72-year-old woman who lived in a modest house 2 blocks from the gated community. Emily had been helping her for over 3 years, ever since Mrs. Gloria had a fall and broke her arm. "Mrs. Gloria!" Emily tried to hide her tears. I'm fine, really." "No, you're not, dear. Mr. Walter told me what happened yesterday." Mrs. Gloria stepped closer. "What a shame. A man treating a woman like that." "You know Mr. Walter?" "Yes, I do. He's married to my niece, Joan. Good family." Mrs. Gloria took Emily's hand. "Come with me, dear. You'll stay at my place until you sort things out." "I can't impose on you." "Nonsense. You helped me so much when I needed it." Mrs. Gloria was already pulling Emily along. "Now it's my turn to help you." Mrs. Gloria's house was small but very cozy. It had just 2 bedrooms, a living room, kitchen and bathroom, but it was always clean and smelled nice. Mrs. Gloria prepared a simple but delicious breakfast, Homemade bread, margarine, cheese, and freshly brewed coffee. "Eat properly, dear," said Mrs. Gloria, pouring a cup of coffee. "You need to keep your strength up." "Mrs. Gloria, why are you being so kind to me?" "Sweetheart, do you think I've forgotten all you've done for me?" Mrs. Gloria sat across the table. "When I broke my arm, you came here every day, did the shopping, cleaned the house, cooked, and you never took a penny." Emily had forgotten about that. To her, helping Mrs. Gloria was natural. The woman lived alone, had no close family, and Emily enjoyed her company. "And it wasn't just me," Mrs. Gloria continued. "You helped Mrs. Teresa when she had surgery. You helped Mr. John when his wife fell ill. I've always seen you helping someone in the neighborhood. I like helping." Emily gave a small smile, her first in 24 hours. "Well, now it's our turn to help you." Mrs. Gloria stood up. "I'll get the back room ready. You'll stay here as long as you need." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now, continuing. That afternoon, as Emily arranged her few clothes in the room, there was a knock at the door. It was Mrs. Teresa, a 68-year-old woman who lived on the parallel street. "I heard what happened, dear," said Mrs. Teresa, entering with a bag. "I brought some of my clothes that might fit you." "Mrs. Teresa, you didn't have to." "Of course I did." Mrs. Teresa opened the bag. "You saved me when I had my gallbladder surgery. She stayed with me in the hospital, took care of me at home. If it weren't for you, I would have been all alone when I fell ill." Emily remembered that time. Mrs. Teresa had no one, and Emily spent an entire week sleeping on her couch, helping with her post-surgery recovery. "Look here," Mrs. Teresa showed her the clothes. "These are practically new, and this blue blouse will look lovely on you." Over the next week, more people from the neighborhood showed up at Mrs. Gloria's house. Mr. John brought vegetables from his small garden. Mrs. Mary offered sewing work. Mr. Anthony, the baker, arrived with fresh bread and an unexpected proposal. "Emily, you've always said you made the best sweets around," said Mr. Anthony. "How about making some to sell at the bakery?" "I don't have money to buy ingredients, Mr. Anthony." "I'll supply the ingredients. We'll split the profits 50-50. What do you think?" It was a chance to start earning her own money. Emily agreed right away. Over the weekend, she made brigadeiros, beijinhos, quindines, and carrot cakes. Everything sold out on the first day. "Emily, you need to make more." Mr. Anthony was thrilled. "Customers are asking if there'll be more tomorrow." "I can do it, yes, but I'll need more ingredients." "No problem. Just make a list." In the following days, Emily settled into a routine. She woke up early, made the sweets, took them to the bakery, and spent the rest of the day helping Mrs. Gloria with house chores. At night, the neighborhood women would come visit, and Emily discovered a world she hadn't known before. Mrs. Gloria had been a teacher for 40 years. Mrs. Teresa was a nurse and raised 4 children alone after her husband left her. Mr. John was retired from the postal service and kept a garden that fed half the neighborhood. Every person had a fascinating life story. "You know, Emily," Mrs. Gloria said one evening, "you've changed." "How so?" "Lighter. Despite everything that's happened, you seem more like yourself." Emily thought about it. It was true. For the first time in years, she didn't have to walk on eggshells when she spoke, didn't have to worry if the food was good enough, if the house was clean enough, if she was thin enough. She could just be herself. 2 weeks after being thrown out of her home, Emily was arranging the sweets at the bakery when she spotted a familiar figure through the window. It was Karen, walking by on the sidewalk outside. Emily ducked behind the counter, but Karen didn't see her. "Who's that woman?" asked Mr. Anthony, noticing Emily's reaction. "My ex-sister-in-law, the one responsible for everything that happened to me." "Ah, the witch who made up all those lies," Mr. Anthony shook his head. "Mrs. Gloria told me the whole story. I'm scared of running into her. Or Richard." "Sweetheart, you can't live in fear." Mr. Anthony placed a hand on her shoulder. "You didn't do anything wrong. In fact, I have some good news for you." "What news?" "Remember Dr. Henry, that gentleman who always buys your quindins?" Emily remembered. He was a polite, well-dressed man who often praised her sweets. Well, he heard about your situation and wants to talk to you. He's a retired lawyer. A lawyer? What for? He said he might be able to help you sort out the legal side of your marriage. Would you like to speak with him? Emily felt nervous. She had no money to pay a lawyer, and she still didn't know if she truly wanted a divorce or if there was any chance of reconciling with Richard. Dr. Henry came to the bakery the next day. He was an elegant man in his 70s, with graying hair and a kind smile. Emily, it's a pleasure to meet you properly. He shook her hand. May I speak with you in private? They went to the back of the bakery, where Mr. Anthony had set up a small table for them to talk. Emily, I heard about your situation through friends in the neighborhood, began Dr. Henry. I'd like to offer free legal help. Doctor, I can't afford to pay. I'm not charging anything, he gently interrupted. You took care of my wife Rose when she was sick. Do you remember her? Emily remembered. Mrs. Rose was a very sweet lady she had met at the hospital when she took Mrs. Teresa for an appointment. Mrs. Rose had been hospitalized, alone, and Emily had spent a few afternoons keeping her company. Mrs. Rose, how is she? She passed away 6 months ago. Dr. Henry lowered his voice. But she always talked about you, about the kind woman who appeared out of nowhere and stayed with her during those difficult afternoons. Emily felt her eyes well up. Mrs. Rose had been very special, always telling funny stories from her youth. Rose made me promise that if I ever found you, I should repay your kindness, Dr. Henry continued. So will you accept my help? Yes, I will. Thank you so much. First, I need to know, do you want to divorce Richard? Emily hesitated. Part of her still hoped this was all just a nightmare, that Richard would go back to normal, that they could reconcile. But another part knew some things couldn't be undone. I'm not sure yet. He hurt me so much. I understand. But regardless of your decision, you have rights. 15 years of marriage can't just be erased. Dr. Henry opened a folder. Did you work during the marriage? I always helped with something. I made sweets to sell, did some sewing, cleaned a few houses, but the money all went to the household. Good. That proves you contributed financially to the family's assets. Do you know what the couple's assets are? The house we lived in was rented, but they have a transport business, and I know Richard has some savings. Perfect. I'll start looking into the financial situation. Dr. Henry made some notes. And I need you to tell me everything that happened, in as much detail as possible. Emily told the whole story. Karen's manipulation, the photos taken secretly, the lies spread to her family, the public humiliation. Dr. Henry listened carefully, asking specific questions. Emily, what your husband did constitutes domestic violence, he said finally. Not just physical, but emotional and psychological. But he never hit me. Violence isn't just physical. Public humiliation, kicking you out of the house, blocking cards, spreading lies, all of that is violence. Emily had never thought of it that way. To her, violence had only meant physical aggression. She began to realize she had been a victim for much longer than she'd thought. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now back to the story. Meanwhile, in the house that had once been Emily's, Richard was starting to feel the consequences of his actions. On the first day, he thought he was free and happy. He ordered food through an app, left dirty dishes in the sink, and fell asleep watching TV on the couch. On the second day, the food delivery lost its appeal. Richard tried to cook, but burned the beans and made soggy rice. The house began to get messy and smell bad. On the third day, Karen showed up to help. Hey bro, she said cheerfully as she walked in. How's the single life treating you? It's different. Richard looked around, embarrassed by the mess. What's that smell? Karen pinched her nose. I think it's the trash. I don't know when the garbage truck comes. Richard, Emily always took care of these things, didn't she? Karen laughed. But now you're free. You can date beautiful modern women. Richard smiled, trying to cheer himself up with the idea. But deep down he just felt lost. 15 years of having everything organized, and now he didn't even know when to take out the trash. Karen can you help me organize a few things here? Of course, but I can't stay long. I have a date today. She started gathering some dirty clothes. Richard, do you know how to do laundry? What do you mean? In the machine. Do you know how to use the washing machine? Richard stopped to think. He always saw Emily fiddling with the machine, but he never paid attention to how it worked. Sort of. Oh, Richard, Karen laughed. You'll have to learn, or hire a housekeeper. Housekeepers are expensive. Then learn. It's not hard. Karen helped for a few hours but then left, leaving Richard alone with a pile of dirty clothes and an empty fridge. He tried using the washing machine but put in too much soap, and it started leaking foam. That night, he tried sleeping in the bedroom, but the bed had been unmade for days and the sheets were dirty. He slept on the couch again, but his back was starting to hurt. At work, things weren't going well either. Karen had taken on some administrative responsibilities, but had no clue about organization. The papers were all a mess. She lost some important invoices, and Richard had to work late to fix the problems. Karen, are you sure you can handle the administrative side? Richard asked, irritated. Of course I can, it's just a matter of adjusting, she replied defensively. Emily didn't do anything special. Emily kept everything in perfect order. Oh, Richard, don't start missing your ex-wife now. Karen stomped her foot. You said yourself she was useless. Richard didn't respond, but he was starting to realize Emily did a lot more than he'd thought. The house was always clean, organized, smelling nice. The food was always ready and delicious. The clothes were always washed and ironed. The bills were always paid on time. After a week alone, Richard was exhausted and stressed. He ate poorly, slept poorly, and lived in chaos. He tried hiring a housekeeper, but the price was steep, and he realized he was spending way more on takeout than he'd imagined. That's when he decided to call Emily's mother, Mrs. Thompson. Maybe he could convince her to talk to her daughter, ask Emily to come back. After all, it had all been a misunderstanding, a moment of stress. Hello, Mrs. Thompson, it's Richard. Richard. Her voice was cold. What do you want? Mrs. Thompson, I wanted to talk about Emily. I have nothing to say about that wretched girl. Mrs. Thompson cut him off. After what I found out about her, I want nothing to do with her. What did you find out? Richard pretended not to know. The affairs, the lies. 15 years thinking my daughter was a saint, only to find out she was cheating on you. Richard felt a weight in his stomach. Karen's lies had worked so well, even he was starting to believe them. Mrs. Thompson, maybe we can talk this through. There's nothing to discuss. My daughter has completely disappointed me. Mrs. Thompson hung up on him. Richard was lost in thought. Part of him knew Emily would never cheat. She barely left the house, only talked to the elderly neighbors, spent her days cooking and cleaning. But Karen had shown those photos, told those stories. 2 weeks after the separation, Richard was starting to get sick. He ate only processed food, couldn't keep the house clean, and was always late for work because of the domestic chaos. He'd lost weight and had deep dark circles under his eyes. That's when Karen showed up with a proposal. Richard, how about I move in here? She suggested. I can take care of the house, cook, organize everything. I don't know, Karen. You have your own life. My life is taking care of my brother, she insisted. Besides, we can reorganize the business. With Emily out of the way, we can expand the business, Richard agreed, desperate for some help. Karen moved in the next day, bringing her things and taking over the house. But soon Richard discovered his sister wasn't exactly like Emily. Karen only cooked basic, flavorless meals. She kept the house somewhat clean but always complained about the work. And worst of all, she was constantly bringing friends over, throwing parties and spending money. Karen, you can't spend so much, Richard complained, looking at the credit card bills. Relax, little bro, she laughed. Now that you're not wasting money on that leech, Emily, you can give me an allowance. An allowance? You're my sister, not my daughter. I'm the sister who dropped her life to take care of you. Karen crossed her arms. I think it's fair to get some compensation. Richard realized he'd jumped out of the frying pan into the fire. Instead of a wife who cared for the home with love, he now had a sister who did it out of self-interest. At the company, things didn't improve either. Karen remained disorganized, lost important clients, and Richard's brothers started complaining. Richard, "Your sister is hurting our business," said Charles, the eldest brother. "She lost the contract with the mall's delivery service. She's still learning." "Learning?" Charles snapped. "Emily never lost a single contract. She might not have a degree, but she knew the business. Emily just did what I told her." Richard tried to defend himself. "Richard, wake up!" Charles slammed the table. "Emily handled all the company's finances. She knew every contract, deadline, and amount by heart, and we never charged her for it." For the first time, Richard stopped to think about the work Emily had done for the company. She was always around during business discussions, always remembered important details, always organized the paperwork. He thought she was just being nosy, but she'd actually been working. "Charles, do you think I was wrong?" "I think you were influenced by Karen," Charles said honestly, "and I think you lost a good woman over nonsense." "But the cheating—" "What cheating, Richard?" Charles looked at him in disbelief. "Emily barely left the house. When would she have had time to cheat on you?" Richard began questioning everything that had happened. His doubts grew each day, especially when comparing his current life to the one he'd had before. A month after the separation, Richard decided to investigate on his own. He stopped by the bakery where Emily supposedly met her lover and spoke with Mr. Anthony. "Sorry to bother you, Mr. Anthony. I'm Emily's ex-husband." "Oh, it's you," Mr. Anthony said coldly. "What do you want?" "I wanted to know about Emily's relationship with you." Mr. Anthony burst into laughter, loud and genuine. "Relationship? What relationship, son?" He wiped tears from his eyes. "Emily has been buying bread here for years. We chat about recipes, the weather, our grandkids, just like I do with all my customers. But she came here all the time." "Of course she did. She bought bread almost every day." Mr. Anthony stopped laughing and turned serious. "What kind of man thinks such nonsense about an honest woman like Emily?" "I saw photos." "Photos of what? Two people talking in a bakery?" Mr. Anthony shook his head. "Son, you've been a fool." Richard left the bakery feeling like an idiot. He decided to dig deeper. He went to Mrs. Gloria's house where someone said Emily was staying. When he arrived on the street, he saw Emily leaving the house with a bag in her hands. She looked different, not exactly thinner, but more confident, walking with her head held high. She wore a blue blouse that brought out her eyes and had a smile on her face, one he hadn't seen in years. Richard followed her from a distance and saw her go to Mrs. Teresa's house. He watched through the window and saw Emily arranging medications, tidying up the house and preparing food. Mrs. Teresa was clearly ill, and Emily cared for her with tenderness. Later, she went to Mr. John's house, helped carry water for the plants and organized some papers for him. Then she stopped by the small grocery store and bought a few items, always chatting politely with everyone. Richard realized Emily was deeply woven into the neighborhood in a way he'd never imagined. She knew everyone, helped everyone, and was respected and loved by all. And he had thrown it all away over lies. That night, he tried to talk to Karen about his discoveries. "Karen, are you sure about those photos of Emily?" "Of course I am. Why do you ask?" She seemed nervous. "I spoke with the baker. He said there was never anything between them." "Richard, you'd believe a stranger over your own sister?" Karen snapped. "Of course he'd deny it. Married men always do. Mr. Anthony is 70 and has been a widower for 10 years. So what? Old men have needs too." Karen was visibly uncomfortable. "Karen, tell me the truth. Was there ever anything between Emily and anyone?" Karen hesitated for a few seconds, long enough for Richard to understand everything. "There wasn't, was there?" He stood up from his chair. "You made it all up." "Richard, I only wanted what's best for you." Karen tried to justify herself. "That woman was dragging you down." "Dragging me down how?" "By taking care of me, organizing my life, working at the company without pay. She was fat, lazy. You deserve better." "Says who? You?" Richard was growing angry. "Karen, you destroyed my marriage out of pure jealousy." "It's not jealousy. It's sisterly love," she shouted. "I love you and want to see you happy." "I was happy," Richard shouted back. "I had a wonderful wife who loved me, took care of me, worked with me. And you ruined it all." Richard, don't talk to me like that. Karen, you're leaving my house today, he said firmly, and you're going to undo every lie you spread about Emily. Richard, you're being unfair. Unfair is what I did to my wife. He pointed to the door. Get out of my house now. Karen stormed out, but not before hurling a few more cruel words about Emily. Richard was alone again, but now with a heavy conscience and regret eating at him. Over the next few days, he tried to right some wrongs. He called Mrs. Thompson and told her the truth about Karen's lies. Emily's mother was shocked and deeply regretted believing the slander. Richard, I need to apologize to my daughter, Mrs. Thompson said, crying. How could I believe those lies? Mrs. Thompson, Karen was very convincing. I believed her too. Where is Emily? I need to talk to her. She's staying with a friend in Greenville, but I think it's best to give her some time. She must be very hurt with me, with all of us. Richard also tried to manage his life alone. He learned to use the washing machine, attempted to cook, and kept the house in order. But he noticed he was doing everything mechanically, without the love and care Emily put into every task. At work, he tried to take over the responsibilities she had handled, but it was incredibly difficult. She had created an efficient system, knew every client by name, and remembered all the important details. Richard realized it would take months to replace her properly. 2 weeks after kicking Karen out, Richard couldn't bear the loneliness and regret any longer. He decided he needed to find Emily and beg for forgiveness. He didn't know if she would forgive him, but he had to try. He went to Mrs. Gloria's house on a Friday afternoon. He knocked on the door several times, but no one answered. A neighbor said they'd gone out for an errand in the city center. Richard decided to wait. He sat on the sidewalk in front of the house, rehearsing in his mind what he would say. 2 hours passed before he saw Emily and Mrs. Gloria returning, carrying a few bags. When Emily saw him, she stopped on the sidewalk. Richard stood up slowly, unsure how to approach. "Emily?" he began. "What do you want here, Richard?" she asked firmly, but not aggressively. "I want to talk to you, please." Mrs. Gloria looked at Emily, waiting for her reaction. "Mrs. Gloria, could you go inside?" Emily asked. "I'll talk to him out here." "Are you sure, dear?" "I am. It won't take long." Mrs. Gloria went inside, not without giving Richard a stern look first. Emily stayed on the sidewalk, arms crossed, waiting for him to speak. "Emily, I found out the truth," Richard started. "About Karen's lies, about the photos, about everything." "Good for you," she replied flatly. "Emily, I was wrong, so wrong. I let anger take over, my sister's lies. I shouldn't have believed her. Richard, you threw me out of the house. You humiliated me in front of everyone. You threw me away like trash," she said slowly. "Literally into the trash. I know. It was horrible. I wasn't myself." "You weren't yourself?" For the first time, her voice rose slightly. "Richard, that wasn't just anger. You planned it. You took my clothes, dragged me to the trash, and threw me in. That was deliberate." Richard lowered his head. She was right. It hadn't just been a moment of rage. It had been pure cruelty. "Emily, I want to ask for your forgiveness, and I want you to come home." "Home?" She let out a bitter laugh. "What home, Richard? You said my place was in the trash, that I was disgusting, that you couldn't stand sharing a bed with me anymore." "I didn't mean it." "Of course you did," she interrupted. "Richard, you didn't say those things in anger. You said what you really felt. Karen just gave you an excuse to say it. That's not true. Richard, for months you've been treating me badly, complaining about the food, the house, my weight, everything. The only thing Karen did was give you the courage to do what you'd wanted to do for a long time." Richard stayed silent because she was right. For months he had been critical and cruel, always comparing Emily to other women, always finding fault. "Emily, I can change." "Richard, you're free to change, but you'll have to do it alone," she said, turning toward the door. "I'm not your wife anymore." "Emily, wait." He lightly grabbed her arm. "We can try again. We can go to therapy, talk." "Richard, let me go," she pulled away. "I don't want to be your wife anymore. I don't want to keep proving I'm good enough for you." "You are good enough. You always were." If I always was, why did you treat me like I wasn't? She looked him in the eye. Richard, I spent 15 years of my life trying to be perfect for you. Cooking, cleaning, working, taking care of everything. And in the end, you threw me away like trash. It was a mistake. It was who you really are. She opened the door. Richard, I forgive you. But forgiving doesn't mean coming back. It means I won't carry anger toward you for the rest of my life. Emily, please. Good luck, Richard. I hope you find happiness. She stepped inside and closed the door. Richard stood outside, listening to the sound of the lock. For the first time, he understood he had lost Emily forever, not because of Karen's lies, but because of his own actions over the years. In the months that followed, their lives went in opposite directions. Richard sank into depression, lost weight, and had problems at his company. He tried dating other women, but he always compared them to Emily and felt empty. Emily, on the other hand, flourished. Her sweets business grew so much that she rented a small space and opened a bakery. Mrs. Gloria became her partner, using her experience as a teacher to handle the administrative side. The bakery, Emily's Sweets, became a neighborhood gathering spot, not just for the delicious treats, but for the welcoming atmosphere Emily created. She hired 2 employees, a young single mother who needed work and a 60-year-old woman who had lost her job due to her age. Emily, you have a knack for business, said Dr. Henry one afternoon while eating one of her carrot cakes. Have you thought about expanding? For now, I just want to stabilize this location, she replied, serving coffee. But I do have plans to grow slowly. And the divorce? How's that going? It's almost finalized. The asset division too, she smiled. I discovered I'm entitled to much more than I imagined. Good. You deserve to be compensated for all those years of work. The divorce proceedings revealed Emily was entitled to half the assets acquired during the marriage, including a share of the transport company. Richard tried to contest it, but Dr. Henry had gathered enough evidence of the work she'd done for the business. Richard, your ex-wife is entitled to 50% of the assets acquired during the marriage, explained Richard's lawyer. That includes a stake in the company. But she was never an official partner. Unpaid domestic labor and business contributions are considered part of the family's shared assets. The lawyer showed the documents. Her lawyer did a very thorough job. Richard realized he would lose a significant portion of his wealth. The company would have to sell some vehicles to pay Emily her share. Ironically, he was now forced to financially acknowledge the value of the work she'd always done for free. 6 months after the separation, Richard was in a dire situation. He had lost too much weight, had health problems from stress and poor diet, and the company was struggling financially. That's when he made a desperate decision. On a rainy night, he went to Mrs. Gloria's house and knocked insistently. Richard! Emily opened the door, surprised to see him in such a state. What are you doing here, soaked like this? Emily, I need to talk to you. He was visibly shaken. Please. Richard, we've already talked about this. It's not about reconciliation, he interrupted. It's about work. Emily hesitated but let him in. Mrs. Gloria appeared in the living room, clearly uneasy about his presence. Mrs. Gloria, you can stay, said Emily. Richard, what do you want? Emily, the company is failing without you, he began, his voice breaking. My brothers are thinking of selling everything. And what does that have to do with me? You know how everything works. The clients like you. You kept everything running smoothly. He was almost pleading. Don't you want to come back and work there? Work for you? She asked, incredulous. Work as a partner, like it should have always been. He lowered his head. Emily, I'm desperate. Without you, I can't keep anything running. Richard, are you offering me a partnership in the company? Yes, with a salary, profit sharing, everything official. He looked into her eyes. Emily, I need you. Professionally. Emily glanced at Mrs. Gloria, who shook her head disapprovingly. Richard, I have my own business now, she replied calmly. And it's doing very well. But there you'd earn so much more. Richard, it's not about the money, she stood up. It's a matter of dignity. I won't go back to working somewhere I was disrespected. But it would be different now. It would be different because you need me. Not because you respect me, she crossed her arms. Richard, you're only valuing me now because you realized you need me. Emily, I always knew I needed you. No, you didn't, she shook her head. If you had, you wouldn't have thrown me away. Richard fell silent, knowing she was right. Richard, you need to learn to live without me, she said gently but firmly, professionally and personally. I can't, Emily. Without you, I'm nothing. Richard, that's not love, that's dependency. She walked toward the door, and it's not healthy for either of us. Emily, please. Richard, you need to leave. She opened the door. And you need to get help. Therapy, a psychologist, something. You're not okay. Richard walked out with his head down into the rain, finally understanding he had lost Emily forever. Not just as his wife, but as someone willing to help him. In the following months, he was forced to sell part of the business to cover the division of assets. With the money, Emily expanded her bakery and bought a house for herself and Mrs. Gloria. A year after the separation, Emily was unrecognizable, not physically, but in her confidence and joy for life. Her bakery was a success. She had hired more employees and was even considering opening a second location. Richard, on the other hand, had lost the company, was living in a studio apartment, and worked as a rideshare driver to get by. The fall had been brutal, but necessary for him to understand the value of what he'd lost. One afternoon, while on a ride, he got a request to pick someone up near Emily's bakery. When he arrived, he saw it was her who had called the car. "Emily," he said, surprised. "Richard." She was equally startled. "You're working as a driver?" "Yeah," he replied, a little ashamed. "It's what I managed after everything." Emily got into the car, but the mood was awkward. "How have you been?" she asked politely. "Surviving," he gave a sad smile. "And you?" "I've seen the bakery is always busy." "It's going well, yes, really well," she smiled genuinely. "Richard, are you okay? You look thinner." "I'm learning to take care of myself." He kept his eyes on the road. "It's not easy." "I can imagine." She looked out the window. "Richard, have you thought about getting help? Therapy?" "Yeah, I have. I've been in therapy for a few months," he admitted. "The therapist said I need to learn to value myself without depending on others." "That's important," she agreed. "Emily, can I ask you something?" "Go ahead." "Are you happy now?" Emily thought for a few seconds before answering. "I am, Richard. For the first time in a long time, I'm happy." "Tell me what it's like," he asked, genuinely curious. "It's freeing," she smiled. "I wake up every day knowing I don't have to prove anything to anyone, that I can be myself, that my worth doesn't depend on someone else's approval." Richard felt a pang in his chest, but also a strange relief. Seeing Emily happy was painful, yet it soothed him in some way. "Emily, I want you to know that—" "I regret everything," he said as they stopped at a red light. "Not just hurting you, but wasting so many years without valuing you." "Richard, I've already forgiven you." She briefly placed her hand on his shoulder. "And I hope you forgive yourself too. Carrying guilt won't change the past. How can you be so generous? Because holding on to resentment only hurts us," she explained. "Richard, you're not a bad person. You just lost your way. Do you think I can find it again? I think everyone can, but you have to truly want it, and you have to accept that some things can't be undone." They arrived at Emily's destination, a store selling baking supplies. "Richard, thanks for the ride," she said, getting out of the car. "Emily, wait," he called after her. "Do you think that one day we could be friends?" She thought for a moment. "Maybe. When you're at peace with yourself. When you don't need me to feel complete." She leaned into the window. "Richard, I'm rooting for you, truly. I want you to be happy." "Thank you, Emily. From the bottom of my heart." She walked away, and he watched as she entered the store. For the first time in months, Richard felt something like peace. Not hope for reconciliation, but acceptance of what had happened and determination to rebuild himself. 2 years later, Emily was opening the third branch of her bakery. Mrs. Gloria, now 74, remained her business partner and closest friend. Emily's life was full. She had a thriving business, a beautiful home, true friends, and had even met a kind widower named Anthony, who frequented the bakery. Richard, meanwhile, had managed to rebuild his life. He still worked as a driver but had saved enough to buy his own car and was planning to start a small transport business. He attended therapy regularly and had learned to live alone without feeling lost. One afternoon, while making a delivery near the bakery, he decided to stop in for a treat. Not to see Emily, but because he genuinely wanted to try one of the famous brigadeiros everyone raved about. "Good afternoon," he said as he entered, addressing one of the employees. "Good afternoon, how can I help you?" the young woman asked. "I'd like a small box of brigadeiros, please." Just then, Emily came out from the back carrying a tray of sweets. "Richard," she smiled, seeming genuinely happy to see him. "How are you?" "Good, Emily, really good," he smiled back. "I came to try the famous sweets." "That's wonderful." She set the tray on the counter. "How are things?" "Going well. I managed to buy my own car, saving up to start a small business," he said, proud of his modest achievements. "That's amazing. I'm so happy for you. And you? How are things here?" "Great. This is our third location," she gestured around. "And I have someone special in my life now." "Really?" Richard felt a twinge, but managed a sincere smile. "I'm happy for you. He's a lucky man. He's a wonderful gentleman, a widower with 2 grown children. We met here at the bakery," she beamed. "He treats me like a queen." "Like you've always deserved," Richard said honestly. They chatted for a few more minutes. The conversation was light, friendly, free of resentment. Richard realized he could be near Emily without feeling pain or despair. He could genuinely rejoice in her happiness. "Richard, can I ask you a favor?" Emily said as he was leaving. "Of course." "If you start your business, come see me. I always need transport for deliveries," she smiled. "It'd be nice to work with someone I trust." "Really? You'd do that?" "Of course. You're a good driver, punctual, and, well, we've known each other a long time," she laughed. "It'd be a professional partnership." "Emily, thank you." "Really?" He shook her hand. "That means a lot to me." "Richard, you deserve a second chance. Everyone does." As he left the bakery carrying his box of brigadeiros, Richard felt he had finally closed a chapter. Emily was no longer the woman he had lost. She was someone who had grown, thrived, and found her own happiness, and he was genuinely happy for her. 6 months later, Richard managed to set up his small transportation business. He had only 2 vans, but it was gradually growing. Emily was one of his first clients, and their professional partnership worked well. One afternoon, while making a delivery to the bakery, he saw Emily in the back of the store, hugging a distinguished gentleman with graying hair. They looked happy, talking and laughing together. Richard felt sincere joy seeing her like that. "Dr. Anthony," Emily called out, "come meet Richard, my transportation supplier." The man approached with a warm smile. "Pleasure to meet you, Richard. Emily speaks very highly of your work." "The pleasure is mine, Dr. Anthony." Richard shook his hand. "Emily is a special client." "He's my ex-husband," Emily explained naturally. "But today, we're business partners." "It's wonderful when people can maintain a civil relationship after divorce," said Dr. Anthony. "That speaks well of both your characters." Richard was surprised by how easily Emily introduced him. There was no shame, resentment, or discomfort. They had truly managed to build a respectful relationship from the ruins of their broken marriage. As Richard was leaving, Emily walked him to the van. "Richard, can I tell you something?" "Of course." "I'm proud of you," she said sincerely. "You've changed a lot. You've become a better man." "Thank you, Emily. That means a lot coming from you. And I want you to know that I've completely forgiven you. From the heart." She placed her hand on his arm. "You hurt me deeply, but you also taught me that I was stronger than I thought." "Emily, let me finish," she smiled. "Richard, if it weren't for everything that happened, I never would have discovered who I really am. I never would have had the courage to start my own business, my own life. So, in a strange way, I'm grateful. You're an amazing person, he said emotionally. Anthony is a very lucky man. And you'll find someone too. Someone who loves you for the man you are now, not for what you have. Maybe one day, he smiled. For now, I'm learning to love myself first. That's the wisest thing you've ever said, she laughed. Richard got into the van, waved through the window and drove off. In the rearview mirror, he saw Emily walk back into the bakery, where Anthony waited for her with a loving smile. For the first time in years, Richard felt whole. Not because he had Emily in his life, but because he had finally learned to live without depending on someone else to feel valuable. Emily and Richard's story had ended as a marriage, but a new story had begun. One of two people who had managed to forgive, grow, and move forward with dignity. And perhaps that was the best revenge of all. Not the destruction of the other, but building a happy life despite everything that had happened. Emily didn't need to make Richard beg to come back. He did that on his own when he realized what he'd lost. But by then, she had already discovered she didn't need him to be happy. End of story. Now tell us what you thought of this story of resilience and redemption. Do you believe Emily made the right choice by not taking Richard back, even after he acknowledged his mistakes? Share your thoughts in the comments and tell us about your own experiences of overcoming challenges. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other inspiring stories like this one.